Hi everyone. So this was the project which we have built in the last video. We were able to build this PNPM workspace and these two tiny projects. Okay, now we want to use the NX tooling. तो उसके लिए हमें क्या करना है, पहले यहाँ पे जाओ, NX सर्च करो and try to see NX console. NX console को आप install कर लो. I mean this is really very helpful if you are using NX tooling on your project. और यहाँ पैकेज जेसन पे अंदर जाके NX इंस्टॉल कर लो. pnpm add NX सिंपल कमांड है, pnpm add NX. ओके, दिस इज not add dependency to workspace root. Where am I? Okay, sorry. npm install, because this is here I need to add a dependency at the root, right? So I think I need to use the flag. Sorry, let's say the flag is workspace root or with the w flag. Okay, okay, so this will add NX, and after that, once you need to have just nx.json file, and what that nx.json file, that will add lots of things on your project for the automation. What it contains is task runners. तो वर्कस्पेस क्या कर रहा है, हमारे प्रोजेक्ट सेटअप कर देता है एंड वी कैन मैनेज द मल्टी रिपो सेटअप. अब जैसे हमें बहुत सारे टास्क ऑटोमेट करने होते हैं, लाइक बिल्ड, लिंट, प्रिटियर, तो ऑल दोज टास्क रनर्स कैन बी ऑटोमेटेड थ्रू द NX. अब यहाँ पे आई कैन ओपन NX कंसोल. इट इज, I can hide couple of them. NX console it is, and I need to select the workspace. We need to initialize it in such a way. I think this select the workspace directory. It is initializing it, and it found that these are the two projects. Okay, and ये हमारे कुछ common NX commands है. अब देखो ये है how these commands popped up here, because we are using NX and it is scanning all these projects and pulling out the पैकेज. जो एंड पैकेज जेसन के अंदर जो हमने स्क्रिप्ट लिखी है, बिल्ड, स्टार्ट डेव, लेंट, प्रिटियर, सारी की सारी यहाँ पे आ गई. अब आपको रन में नहीं करना है. कौन सी कमांड आपको रन करनी, लाइक बिल्ड, तो यू कैन जस्ट एग्जीक्यूट दिस कमांड NX रन मैनी टारगेट बिल्ड. तो इट इज गोइंग टू रन द बिल्ड कमांड ऑन बोथ द प्रोजेक्ट. तो अब ये क्या कर रहा है, हमारे पास वर्क स्पेस था, ठीक है, बट व्हेन यू वांट टू ऑटोमेट दीज थिंग्स, when you wanted to run bulk task on a multiple projects, multiple things, you can use this particular thing like start debug in which project. तो ये थोड़ा हेल्पफुल है, एक तरीके से कर सकते हो आप. टेस्ट E2E, टेस्ट कवरेज और build, whenever like all the affected targets will get build here. फॉर्मेट लिंट चलाना आपको, लिंट ऑन बोथ द प्रोजेक्ट्स. और तो एग्जीक्यूट कैसे कर रहा है, NX run project name and the command. I think the linter is breaking. That is fine. कुछ dependencies का issue है. But this is how you can run the project. NX Cloud we are not using, but these are the basic scripts you can run. Trigger from here also, like build मुझे run करना है इस project के लिए, I can do the build here. That is easy for me. I can go into the directory और वो build मैं भी कर सकता हूँ, but थोड़ा कुछ नहीं है. VS कोड के साथ साथ वी कैन हैव द फन, वी कैन जस्ट एग्जीक्यूट दीज इजीली. ठीक है, ये फ़ायदा है. तो ये हमारा अब नाउ इन दिस वीडियो व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट इज कस्टम DTO वैलिडेशन. अभी तक हमने क्या किया है, सिंपल प्रोजेक्ट बनाया जैसे लाइक ऑथ ऐप भी. अगर हम देखते हैं तो इसमें हमने क्या किया हुआ है. इफ़ आई स्टार्ट दिस एप्लीकेशन थ्रू NX, मेरी एप्लीकेशन है npm start debug, and I should be able to run this application. Yeah, I use this application only for the crash course कि भाई what are the basic building blocks and all. But if you see this post, put what is the custom validation, what type of validations we will be using. If you go into the task, domain, task controller, तो यहाँ पे custom validation के लिए हमने validation pipe use करना है. So this will always needs to be there at the controller level whenever you are using validation pipe. ठीक है, अब इसके अंदर हमने जैसे like I want to create a task. For creating task you need to send a payload. Create task DTO. अब create task DTO here you can also add a validation. अब validations में क्या हो सकता है? Min length, max length, is string, is defined, is boolean, is UUID, is email. ये बहुत तरीके के validations आप ऐड कर सकते हो. Is optional. ये लगाने के बाद either you pass this parameter or not, doesn't matter. If you are passing it and I'm just saying after this is string, देखो इसके अंदर भी एक catch है. Is optional. If you are not passing it, that's fine. But if you are passing it, then this should be of type string. Or sorry, it should be UUID, right? अगर आप नहीं पास कर रहे हो that is fine, but if you are passing it then you need to make sure that this ID is of type UUID, otherwise I will send you the bad request. That is what class validator or class transformer does. और ये हमने already add भी किए हुए हैं. These are the two modules which we need, class transformer and class validator. ये आपको दोनों मॉड्यूल डिपेंडेंसी चाहिए और इसके लिए हम सिंपल वैलिडेशन पाइप यूज़ करते हैं. आप कंट्रोलर में जाते हैं और यहाँ पे टॉप पे वैलिडेशन पाइप्स ऐड कर दो. दिस इज़ व्हेन यू वांट टू वैलिडेट द पेलोड. अब जैसे पार्स इंट पाइप है, पार्स बूलियन पाइप है, पार्स फ्लोट पाइप है, दोज आर जस्ट टू यूज फॉर प्रिमिटिव्स. बट जैसा आपको पेलोड पास करना, अभी दिस इज जस्ट अ प्लेन पेलोड. व्हाट इफ यू वांट टू डू द वैलिडेशन फॉर द नेस्टेड ऑब्जेक्ट. नेस्टेड ऑब्जेक्ट मतलब जैसे यूजर, यू आर क्रिएटिंग यूजर एंड यू वांटेड टू पास एड्रेस ऑब्जेक्ट इनसाइड इट. Or you also want to validate the address properties. So it's a custom validation, right? So let's use these things in our controller. What we can do is, because now we want to use this project going forward. So let's add the appropriate dependencies here. First of all, I can copy the dependencies from in this project. That is class transformer and class validator. You can copy paste and then do a pnpm install at the root level if you are just manually adding the dependency. Okay, now I will go to the root project. Okay, root project में जाके I will just do pnpm I. So it will add the dependencies in this project also. अब क्या करना है मुझे, क्लास वैलिडेटर ऐड हुआ एंड आई कैन जस्ट लेट्स कीप दिस ओपन. यहाँ पे हम यूज़ पाइप कर सकते हैं एट अ कंट्रोलर लेवल. अभी डेमो के लिए वी जस्ट यूज दिस कंट्रोलर. ओके, एंड import all the required dependencies, add all missing imports, everything is good. Let's say here I'm going to create a method. This is post. ठीक है, update import. And let's say I have a method create task. Okay, it's like the post APIs. And I need to find a way where using which I can pass the payload. So what I will do is I can just use the body annotation. Here I want to use the whole payload. Of type any. This body is coming from NestJS common. And here I'm not doing anything. So here I can use the DTO for the validation. DTO will just do something like, okay, here I can create app.dto.ts. Okay, app.dto.ts, and here I start creating the DTO. And DTO, I mean plain DTO we can copy from here. Simple DTO create task DTO. It's just for demo. We will use all these concepts in our auth application. And let's add all these things, add all missing. I think API property we don't have. You can use Nest Swagger if you really want to use these annotations. Go to the package JSON of this project, Swagger and platform UI Express. I will use Swagger also in this project, so we can actually see this whole running on the Swagger UI instead of hitting this from the Postman. I can do pnpm install, so this will get populated. And now I can do, okay, give me all the imports. Everything is there. So name, description, ID. Now, how can I add a custom DTO, like custom payload here? Nested payload, you can say. This is, let's say, task name and description. And here I have a task info. So I need to create another class here. I can create another class as a task info. So create task info DTO. Okay, this can be contains another set of properties like task ID. Task ID is of type string, UUID, and all these properties you can add. This is like a subclass. So here I have added another. Is UUID is defined. I mean, if it is UUID, then you don't need to add any additional things. UUID means it is defined, it is of type string, you need to specify it. And I call it as a task ID. Okay, it is just like a sub object contains this property. Okay, now what we need to do is create task info DTO. Somehow we need to add here. This can be anything. I mean, it can be another properties like task name, and it can be a string. If you want to mark it as optional, then do it like this, is optional. Okay, you can make it as a required false. For the Swagger, required true. So this is task ID. I mean, you need to specify valid UUID. Task ID required true. Now we need to use this class DTO somehow as a nested object in the create task DTO. So we need to find a way of doing it. So here we need to add a custom payload. So we will be using these special annotations. Validate nested because we are validating the nested payload. And the type is custom info DTO. Validate type that comes from, let's say validate type is coming from the type transformer. We can create alias here. Type as a validate type from class transformer. And this is where we have this. So here we can say info, public info is of type this. Right, so this is like another attribute. We can add the API property and all the rest of the arguments. Okay, this is API property. Name is task info. Example, because this looks like an object, right? So required is, let's say, maybe true because we haven't put optional here. So an example is it contains two properties. You can specify them. Create task info DTO contains task ID and task name. So that is for the consumer who is going to use this API. Task ID is UUID and task name. What was the attribute? It is task name. Task name is of type string. Right, so task info object, validate nested, and this can be array also. We'll talk about this. Let's first validate the object, validate type. So if it is object, then you can also add another validation that it should be object. Okay, it should be object, it is required. And for custom payload validation, for the nested payload validation, we will follow this validation criteria. The task ID is UUID, task name is optional, you can specify or skip it, and this DTO, create task DTO, we will be using in our controller. That's it. This is what you need to do after adding a class validator. Now let's add Swagger so that we can just play with this on the Swagger UI. So Swagger we can add from this. I will copy the Swagger folder. I hope you know what I'm doing. So that is inside source. This contains Swagger config. We are fine with Swagger thing. And then we need to call this function, right? Create document, passing the app instance to the main.ts. So okay, I will do that. Create document and I will pass the app instance. Create document, import it. ठीक है, तो अपना setup हो गया. Now we can start this application and see the magic. I can use NX console or I can go to this project. And why it's not going? Let me go to CD apps and 01 and I can just do npm run, start debug in the watch mode. On 0 error, it is running, should be running on which port? Let's see, 3000. Let's add some prefix. We can just say API v1 task. Okay, and here I can see the Swagger API v1 task, right? Now you can see this Swagger doc. What it is talking about is name, task info contains the task ID that is required, right? So if I try to play with this by passing the wrong payload, it is saying info must be an object. Okay, it's not task info, it should be info, right? That is the first mistake. Let's fix it. It's the info object, right? So in the example, it should be info. So let's fix it. Info, that is fine. Now task info.task ID must be UUID. So this kind of validation I was talking about. That is, it is going to give you the validation for the custom payload also. Task name is optional, so we can remove it. Let's put the UUID here. So I generated a UUID. Copy, paste here. And now it is passing, right? I mean, internally this API is doing nothing, but just a validation I wanted to show. Let's say name, empty string. Name must be longer than 4 characters, right? But that is basic thing. Here I was talking about the nested payload validation. Now let's see if I can convert this info into array of objects. So for that, validate type, this should be of type array. Or how I specify it, it should be an array of this. Wait, let me just check this. First of all, this should be of type array, and instead of is object it will be is array. And you can also specify, okay, if you are passing it, then you need to take care of the min length, should be 1. Validate nested, create task info. So let's see, and here it will be array of objects, right? So specified something like this, and UUID we can replace it with some value. So you don't need to copy and paste every time, just use this UUID. Okay, let's see this now. Okay, and let's try this. So if you are trying to add min length, obviously this is not the correct one, right? Min length means the length should be 1, but this is an array, so there is another annotation for that, array min length. Array means size is 1. Now it will work perfectly. You can pass this. This is an array, right? If you are passing an object, then info must contains at least 1 element. It should be an array. Let's convert it into an array, and this is working perfectly fine now, right? Let me just do this. So this is accepting. So this is how you can actually do the nested payload validation. This is not the one, right? We will be doing validation for actually path parameter, query parameter, request body, headers, any kind of validation you can do. This is the basic validation where you are passing the nested payload, nested object, and you wanted to validate the properties of the nested object also. Okay, there are many things here. Create task info DTO. Let's say task name is optional, but what if you are passing task name as a number, right? So let's say here you are passing task name. I mean, it will convert. It's like it is transforming this one into a string. But let's say if I try to convert it into true, oh, it is transforming that into 1 and 0. Let's see what payload we are getting. If I try to do console.log body, because NestJS transform that also, console.log body. So task name. Here you can see it is passing name as a string, right? Because we are already doing explicit transformation. Here task DTO, this is of type string. So it is passing the task name as a string. So this transforming, because here inside this class validated transform, enable implicit conversion true. So even if you are passing, then it will automatically get converted into string. Okay, so this is all about payload validations, how NestJS does it through validation pipe.